Yo, welcome to the first ever Kingvivor podcast. I am VG, and now let's let everyone introduce themselves.
I am Kingstyn, and I'm the server owner.
I'm chill. I pretty much just yap.
And I am VG, and I will be running this podcast today. So, for starters, the first thing we're going to talk about is the marooning, the first part of the game, and our early impressions on all the castaways. So, coming into this game, we saw three tribes, those three tribes being Nauta, Deriva, and Casco. So, why don't we just go through? Let's start with the Casco tribe and just your early impressions on the six castaways from that specific tribe coming into the marooning and what you guys thought of them.
So I really enjoyed Mickey very early on. We actually almost didn't cast Mickey because we kind of thought he would be just a background character in the season, but going into the season the first couple of days, I feel like he was the most active and I feel like he was going to bring a lot of good gameplay. So Mickey is probably my favorite.
No, I'd have to agree with Kingston. I think Mickey early on was like the one that had like a strong command for the entire tribe, and they kind of stood out to me as well.
I personally, I found Mickey to be a very compelling character, especially on the first episode, just because we kind of see from the lens of Casco as Mickey kind of being this big old leader, the social leader. In the first hour of the game, I mean, Mickey is seen making an alliance with Issa and Chun Li called what is it, Brain, Brawn, and Beauty. So I feel like it's seen as Mickey being a big overplayer early on, which to me I think is a really interesting development. Which, yeah, I think I'm a fan of Mickey. I also think Chun Li is a really, really compelling character. I think Chun Li, a very social player, but also a little sneaky, very suspicious of his tribe mates.
Yeah, I really like Friendly as well.
Yeah, I was going to say Casco really is the tribe of overthinking and overplaying. Like almost all of the most active players episode 1 were from Casco, and I think it's interesting how they all end up being on the same tribe at the beginning.
So I think another interesting player on the Casco tribe, I guess, would be the final member of the Brain, Brawn, and Beauty, which would be Issa, because we see Issa in this kind of position of, okay, so she's added to this alliance, and she has a good standing with players like Newbie and Panda. Well, she's not really anyone's necessarily number one. I feel like she's in a great spot socially because she's not really seen as this massive target early on, but she's very well trusted and aligned with all these groups. So I feel like Issa's a very compelling character as well.
Yeah, we actually see Issa number 1 on power rankings in episode 1, and I think it is because of what you said. She had the Chun-Li and Mickey fully trusting her on one side, and she also had options with Panda and Newbie on the other side. And so I think that's why not only she was in the most power, but I think the Greenie boot benefited her the most because Greenie was the only person that she was not connected with.
Well, that's what I was trying to say about like Mickey taking command of the tribe. Issa more so just worked on all the relationships, got in good with everyone, and kind of just let things fall in place.
I think that is a good point. I think it is interesting to me to see players as well, like Newbie specifically, being a very under the radar player. And I kind of see Newbie in his social standing. Many kind of undervalue Mickey as a player. He's kind of more so seen in the background. He isn't really in the main alliance with Rain, Braun, and Beauty, but we kind of see a potential relationship him and Panda forming, and as well as him kind of leaning towards Issa, which is why I kind of mentioned Issa being in such a great spot in the first place. But I think Newbie's all the interesting character.
Yeah, I think of the people outside of that main alliance, Newbie was the most promising. I think many, as you said, were undermining him, and I think he just had a really good way of getting into people like socially, and I think that was a strong point.
And then I guess finally we have Panda, which Panda kind of like Newbie. He's laying pretty low this episode. He doesn't really strategize that much with others, but he does do a good job getting close with the likes of Issa and Newbie. He's left out of the main alliance of the Brain, Brawn, and Beauty, but I feel like obviously we see that he's not really in the worst position of the tribe. While he doesn't have the power to decide who goes home, he's in a good enough spot where his name is potentially not coming up if they do go to tribal. And then finally we have Greenie, which Greenie is probably I know everyone kind of has some thoughts on Greenie, but Greenie is seen as the more inactive member of the tribe, unfortunately. Um, she notably kind of missed out on the early marooning interactions, which is really important on a game perspective. So I think we definitely see Greenie struggle a little bit, and while Greenie does kind of believe that she's in a better position than she actually is.
Yeah, I was really upset to see Greenie end up in that position because it felt like a lot of it was kind of out of her control. She was going through some IRL things.
Yeah, I believe on Marooning Day, she had a pretty busy shift at work. And so,
Mm.
as players like Mickey, Chun-Li were taking control of the tribe, Greenie was left out a little bit. And I think on a tribe as active as this one, it's those initial connections and first impressions that really got Greenie in the like bottom of the tribe.
I have a fun question for you guys. Do you guys think Greenie would be in a worse or better situation or something of the same had she started on a different tribe?
1000%.
Yeah,
I
I think so too.
I think absolutely. I think we'll obviously get to the concepts and the tribe divisions on Deriva and tribes like Nauta, but I do think Greenie kind of got screwed over. I mean, we literally see in the first hour of the game the first alliance being created by Mickey, Brains, Bronze, and Beauty. If Greenie was
Mhm.
online and fully there at that time, who's to say that Greenie wouldn't have been just included into that alliance and the whole entire shift of power would have been different? That just shows how important marooning truly is. But
Hmm.
I do
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I do think Casco is probably one of the most fun tribes we've seen so far from this cast. I think there's a lot of overthinkers, big players, definitely a big overthinking kind of messy type of tribe. But now I kind of want to head over and I kind of want to look at Deriva now, and I kind of want to look over their entire dynamics in general. The first person I want to look at on that tribe is Alexis. What do you guys think of Alexis?
I love Alexis. Alexis is a female version of Chill so far, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love Alexis too. She's really social, and also she's just really entertaining in her confessional. So like, she just brings a large, strong personality to the entire, cast.
Alexis, in my opinion, is like if you put a Casco member onto a non-social tribe. Like they're just obviously going
Yeah.
to take control socially of everything. And we see that in this first episode with Alexis having everyone have her at number one besides Trap Queen. And as we'll get to soon, Trap Queen doesn't really have any say into the conversation of the dynamics, so it doesn't really matter.
Hmm.
I think that's a great point. I think Alexis really, in the first episode, we see Alexis kind of have lockdown on the tribe. Socially, like you stated, Kingston, they have everyone as their number one besides Trap Queen, who does not trust Alexis for whatever reason, but it doesn't really affect Alexis as all. I think Alexis has a really close connection with players like Malachi, Miguel, Maki, Big T. They all just kind of vibe with Alexis because Alexis kind of has this vibe where while Alexis isn't overtly social, Alexis is social enough where I think it kind of gives this likability to Alexis where players kind of feel like at ease to trust Alexis a little more. So I think Alexis for me is someone I think could go very, very far in this game. The second person I want to cover is Malachi. What are your guys' thoughts on Malachi?
So going into the season, Malachi was up there like near number one for contenders for me. I had really high hopes in his application. He showed these like 30-minute long voice and video confessionals. So I had really high hopes for him. Going into the season, he did let me down a little bit. He wasn't as active and social as I wanted him to be, but he was social with the right people, like you said, Alexis, who was in the most power on this tribe. He made sure he was close with her. He had a decent connection with Miguel going after the first episode. My problem with Malachi this season so far was he left people out like Mackie, like Trap Queen of his social circle, and I think that could bite him later.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. I think Malachi definitely had a really good social awareness of who was gonna be in power, who he vibed with, who he wanted to play the game with, but he definitely didn't do a good job hiding his face when it came just like personally or naturally jive with.
So I think those are all great points. I think Malachi definitely was a player I also had pretty high expectations coming into this season. In this episode, we do not really at the fore of everything. but he does have a solid positioning in the first episode. We see him do make solid connections with Alexis and other players in general. However, like you guys said, later on we kind of see his weaker competition ability and his social mistakes, which kind of leads to some things that we will definitely discuss later. But now I want to talk about the third member of Deriva, which is Miguel. What are our thoughts on Miguel?
Um, I love Miguel's energy. There's a couple people on like in casting, you want to make sure you have a diverse cast. You don't want 18 game bots. You don't want 18 social players. And so people like Miguel, who were kind of just like an uplifting presence. Another one of those people were Greeny, who unfortunately went out and won. And I think on a cast like this, where albeit there are a lot of really good players, we kind of need that like simpler, just like positive attitude in the season. So that's what I enjoy with him so far.
Miguel was someone that I pushed for to be on the cast. I really enjoyed his application. I thought what he said on the application was very well rounded, so I was really excited to see, his energy and see it all play out. And I'm not disappointed by any means, but I'm a little surprised, I should say, because I thought he was going to take more of a command with his uplifting energy. And I don't want to say flat, but it certainly feels like it's not flying as high as I initially thought it would. But there's obviously still plenty of time, and he's not doing bad by any means.
I think the problem with Deriva Tribe or OG Deriva Tribe, which we'll get to Nauta later, but Deriva, as we've kind of talked about, is the weakest of the three,
Mm.
is that there's just a lot of polarizing characters on that tribe. Miguel talked about in his confessional about how there's people like Big T, people like Trap Queen, where they just say stuff that he kind of has a hard time connecting with, and he kind of finds like kind of odd. Um, we spoke about Malachi just earlier, and same problem where he'd have these polarizing characters he couldn't connect with. And I think that's kind of Miguel's main issue in this OG tribe.
Yeah, I think so Miguel actually, when we look through the episode, he makes a key relationship with Alexis.
Mhm.
Um and I think the problem with Miguel though is the only key relationship he really kind of has a strong bond with is Alexis. He's not really focused on many other members of the tribe specifically. And I think we kind of see through his confessional, he thinks he's on a tribe with crazy people based on his comments, and he kind of
Mm-hmm.
feels like this isn't really his group of people. So I think it's an interesting kind of dynamic tribe, but I don't think he's doing bad. I think he's kind of in the middle right now. Definitely a middle spot, but we'll see how Miguel turns out for the rest of the season.
I want to add one more thing with Miguel. So we talk about like polarizing characters and stuff, and Malachi has a good connection with Alexis. Miguel has a connection with Alexis. Mackie, Big T have a good connection with Alexis. And I think because the way that Alexis is able to connect with everyone is because of her adaptability. I think she's the only real person on that tribe who is able to change the way she speaks, kind of like how Chill and VG did in season one. And it's that adaptability that's able to catcher so much good will with these people.
I think that's a great point, Kingston. I think the reason I have such high expectations for Alexis this season is that exact point right there. I think when it comes to orgs, mirroring is such a powerful skill. I mean, you saw it through
Hmm.
Chill through season one. I mean, you saw it through me a little bit through season one, and I think you're going to see it through Alexis this season as well. And it's gonna do them pretty well because the ability to just kind of adapt to who you're talking to and kind of change your vibe, your situation. I feel like naturally it just builds a bond with people, which I think that bond kind of leans into trust. And players and orgs, you kind of want to work with who you like. You don't really always usually
Mhm.
try and work with someone you don't really like. So Alexis has this power of just having these sociable bonds, and people kind of are like, I like Alexis, and then that like translates to, wait, I trust Alexis. That's my number one. So I think Alexis is not even being overtly social either. I think it's just that likability, but kind of more under the radar as well. I don't really think anyone's looking at Alexis as this massive threat either, which is why I think Alexis is going to have a really deep run in this season. Now, the next person from Deriva that we should talk about is Maki. What do we think of Maki?
Maki so far is kind of meh. I don't know. I just think he isn't as social as others, and we'll get to the Nauta tribe. But there's a couple people in the Nauta tribe that kind of remind me of Maki, where they're just kind of like social with a few people, not social with others, and just kind of like middle of the road.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. it's kind of like the common theme. I was gonna say this when you were talking, BG. There's a common theme with people who are not like in the highest social standing of in the game, whether that's currently or whether that's in episode one, and it just can't communicate to the people who they don't get along with or personally or naturally drive with. You'll notice they're just gonna fall a little flat in the tribe. You know, they're not doing bad; they're doing good with the connections that they can easily with, but they're also struggling with the ones that they can't. And I think Maki fits into that category.
He's kind of in an interesting spot because he has some people who don't really trust him that much. Like he does, Trap Queen surprisingly trusts him the most, which is a little weird. But I feel like we kind of see him to be a little delusional in future episodes where he thinks he really is like controlling the game, but in reality, it doesn't seem for that to be the case. I do think he's an interesting character though, and I'm interested to see what he does for the rest of the season. Heading on to now, a name that when I saw this app, I thought, shit, we might have to cast him. Big T. What do we think of Big T?
I really like Big T's energy. He seems passionate whenever he has a thought, especially so far in the VCFs. But even in the app, like going into the season, he's just a really passionate player who seems like he's gonna give it his all. And so far through the episode one, I didn't get any indication that he wouldn't do that.
So for me, I am less on Big T than others. Um, and I think that's because I kind of am more interested in game players, and I don't think Big T was casted as a game player. I think he was casted as a character.
Yeah.
And with us only being a few episodes into the season, we haven't actually seen much of that character yet, and I'm excited for whenever that comes out. But for now, my eye isn't really on Big T for now because he hasn't really done anything interesting game wise besides connect with Alexis, but everyone else in the tribe is doing the same. So
Big T for me, when I saw Big T's app, which I want to point out for people who are watching this, we spent a very long time on applications. Like we seriously, as a production
Yeah.
team, we really took the time. We made sure we read everyone's app. We looked through all of them. We really tried to make the best, most fun cast, diverse cast, and just a genuine great cast overall that we could kind of bring together. And Big T is someone who I have pretty high expectations for coming into the season. Now, obviously, where he is right now, he hasn't been the most active the first episode, and he doesn't really have the best Alexis a lot, just like everyone else. He's not really
Everyone.
dominating socially, but he's kind of at the bottom of the trust rankings. But for me, I think we'll see a little bit of recovery in future episodes. He has no issues with tribal yet, so I think it'll be interesting to see how he navigates that. VCF this episode, he kind of shared our thoughts of what he thinks. I think his strategy of playing
Mhm.
dumb early on is a little risky, making the stupid decisions, acting like a dumbass, hoping that people will buy the act, and that he kind of wants to act like a sheep, like a dumbass, someone loud who like no one's gonna look at, and then hoping he can slide by and start slowly making moves. I think it's an interesting strategy, and it's a strategy that's extremely hard to win with. But I'm interested to see if Big T can pull it off. Finally,
yeah.
we have the final character of Deriva, which is Trap Queen. Our thoughts.
Trap Queen is similar to Big T in that we casted her as a character, not a game player. And unfortunately, Trap Queen has been that token inactive on this tribe. She
Mhm.
flat out has ignored many one-on-ones with people, and so she was very entertaining, I'll say, inside of the beauty challenge part of this challenge. She was really active there, but I just wish that activity kind of followed into her one-on-ones with others because her one-on-ones were pretty boring this episode.
Yeah, I don't have many notes on Trap Queen. I was excited to see Trap Queen play. I was excited to see how Trap Queen's personality would mesh with other people. I think I saw like a funny thing in one-on-ones where I think it was with Miguel where Trap Queen said lip gloss, and I think it was Miguel who was like, "What?" like didn't know
Hmm.
what lip gloss meant at all, and so I that's the kind of interactions that I was hoping for with Trap Queen, but like unfortunately just fell flat. Like that fell flat on his face because there just wasn't enough too much inactivity, and they became someone who was immediately pretty much on the bottom. And I don't know necessarily where the mindset came from with Trap Queen, where they thought they were like potentially in a power position or somewhere in a good standing, especially with that level of inactivity.
Trap Queen to me is kind of a more like we said, we kind of cast a Trap Queen for those who don't know, as an entertainer. And we were hoping that for character or personality, an entertainer not really based on gameplay. We see kind of Trap Queen this episode be a little inactive, obviously. But the interesting thing about Trap Queen this episode is not really responding to one-on-ones, but when we saw that challenge that we'll eventually get to in Beauty, Trap Queen was extremely active there. And, we will get to that and the challenge results and all that stuff. But Trap Queen's definitely a little delusional. Nobody trusts her or wants to work with her. So she's looking to be in danger, and turns out she is. And then finally, we have our final tribe, which is Nauta. And the first person I want to start with on this tribe is Kyle. What are our thoughts on Kyle?
Kyle is in the best position going
Mhm.
into this tribe. He is very similar to Alexis in my mind, that he is just very adaptable and is able to connect with basically everyone. He is a bit more on the, I'll say, like, commanding and like gameplay wise, and so he might, like, as Alexis was under the radar, he's not as under the radar, and I think that could pose him trouble in the future. But for now, he is in a great position.
That was my only note for Kyle. I think we all pretty much agree that he's a really good social player. He does a good job connecting with everyone, and I think the biggest thing is too, he's just putting in a lot of effort too. Like he was relatively active all throughout the first episode. The thing with Kyle that I know, and like I agree with Kingstyn, is just like I just feel like we talk about Alexis and how Alexis has a good understanding of their own social prowess and it not coming back and covering her tracks, right? I don't get that same vibe with Kyle. I do feel like Kyle is someone who eventually will be clocked as a social threat and someone who will be looked at as like a big threat, especially like looking at and looking at his game throughout the Maroon, like throughout the first episode. So I like Kyle. I think he's gonna do very well. I think I also think he's someone who could potentially be clocked pretty easily.
Kyle, yeah, he absolutely really, really did do a great job this episode. He solidified himself as kind of the leader of the tribe, key player. With his fellow power player Keon, which we will get to, but he kind of has the control of the tribe. We see him with Maria, Keon, Cody, and Anthony. The only person he doesn't really have this big of a relationship with is Luna. But to me, I think there's a great comparison is Alexis and Kyle, right? We see Alexis, who everyone trusts on her tribe, or their tribe, but it's very subtle. It's very like gentle, very subtle. Like it's not really. I feel like it's not the same here, because we kind of see some complaints by some players, like specifically Marina in her confessionals about the triple texting, the quadruple texting from Kyle, which seems to be an issue, and kind of not just seen from her. With like if he doesn't get a response, he's going to reach out, and he's definitely seen as the most active on the tribe for sure. So I think people are definitely looking at Kyle, and we'll get to the interesting dynamic between Marina and Kyle later. But I definitely think Kyle is playing a great game so far. My only worry for Kyle is how long can the act be put up before people start clocking him as a social threat and a player? What worries me is he could be sniped in a mid-merge, late-merge type of endgame. I guess we'll find out.
And I want to say one more thing with Kyle. You mentioned him; he could get sent to the end game. We just recently had a VCF with Kyle, and he said that his most like common placements are that late game placements, fifth,
Right.
fourth, third, second. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that again here.
Yep. The way it's setting up Kingston, I definitely think that could be the case. We actually see Marina talking about it, but we will get to that later. Let's stay on track with Keon. What are our thoughts? What do we think of Keon?
Yeah, I was really impressed with Keon. He just shows and displays a lot of, and I wasn't someone in episode one who I was looking at all the one-on-ones, but with Keon, I think he just displays a well-rounded game. Like he shows like the strategic aspect in terms of like his awareness, his placement, and also he's just very, very social as well. One thing I know about Keon is like I do feel like his mind is always turning. Like I feel like the gears in his mind are always turning. He's thinking of multiple scenarios. He's maybe overthinking a little bit on certain interactions, but that's the idea that when I look at Keon's game, that's the picture that I've come to throughout the first episode at least.
And you guys mentioned how Kyle is seen by everyone as the most active, and I kind of disagree because there's been almost as much, maybe more, talk about Keon, and I think Keon is more similar to Kyle than people think. Kyle and Keon are kind of like the 1-2 punch of this tribe, in my opinion. They're kind of like everything revolves around Kyle and Keon.
Mhm.
The thing about Kyle versus Keon, though, is Kyle is the person for most people on this tribe. He's the person for Marina. He's the person to Keon. He's the person to Cody. And the only person sees Keon as their person is Anthony, and Keon is just kind of like the second person to other people. And so I think that's an interesting dynamic.
Well, can
We
I
actually
ask you this? Can I push? I'm gonna ask this question. So,
Mhm.
term right throughout the first episode, do you think that Alan or Kyle would be someone who, and this is again just throughout the first episode, watching them running? Do you think this is like? Do you think Kyle or Keon would be someone who would get sniped first or clocked first?
I am 50-50 actually. In my opinion, there's been equal amount of talk between Keon is the social player on this tribe, where Kyle is liked by a lot of people and super active. Like for different reasons, people are going after them, but I think like you guys said that Kyle was going to be kind of eliminated in late game. I think Keon will too.
I have some thoughts on Keon. So first off, I think Keon is an excellent social player. Like I just want to give a shout out to Keon, like
Hmm.
a fantastic social player, like we're talking about. Keon, similar to Kyle, I would agree with you actually. I do think Keon is the most active, and I do think he has been clocked as the biggest social threat by far. I actually think that's what Kyle has going for him, is that Keon is seen as the bigger social player, which I think being seen as that big social player is actually what's leading people to trust Kyle more than Keon in this scenario. What kind of works favor to have another player like Keon on the tribe, because it makes the dynamic a little more interesting. And we see Kyle and Keon later on try to make some alliances, some groups, and kind of play that middle position and kind of feel good with everyone. But I definitely think it's interesting to see that type of dynamic because, like you said, Kingston, other than Anthony and Luna, everyone has Keon at number two,
Mhm.
which gives him a lot of power. Don't get me wrong, like he's not in danger if they were to ever go to
Hmm.
tribal, but he's not the top spot. But everything in this tribe for certainty definitely resolves around Kyle and Keon. Now, I do think, for me personally, I do think Keon will be sniped mid merge. Just for my personal opinion as of right now, I just feel like people, around will get to just feel like he's a social threat, and I feel like already being seen as that on episode one a little dangerous spot to be in. Obviously we'll see because by episode things change. But as of right now, I think I'm a little worried about Keon long term. But short term, I definitely think he's playing a great game. The next person I want to get to is Marina. What are our thoughts on Marina?
Marina is in less of a power position than Kyle and Keon, but in a much more stable position than Kyle and Keon.
Mhm.
And I think that's almost more important in this game.
Yeah, I don't have many notes as far as like the gameplay goes. I pretty much agree with Kingston on that note. But what I will say about Marina is, as far as the personality goes, as far as the confessionals go, Marina might be my favorite player on the cast. Right now, I love
Hmm.
Marina. Their confessionals are just awesome. So I just love her personality, and I hope she goes far and keeps us entertained.
Yeah, Marina is a slow burn type of player where she will get super active, super social, super strategic as the game goes on. And I think she has a lot of potential in this season. She notably gets in really good graces with the power player Kyle in this tribe. Um, and also she makes a all girls alliance with an all girls is only two, but with Luna. And I think this connection with this lesser player is important for her and good for her. So
Yeah, I'm very high on Marina as a player. I definitely think Marina to me could be one of the players I'll get to obviously later, a potential winner to me. The way I think
Yeah.
Marina's playing the game. She isn't in the top power position. I don't think she needs to be though. I think she's in the perfect position she has because she has a great spot with Kyle and Luna, which we'll get to about Luna later. But Kyle, him and Marina kind of have an interesting dynamic. I think obviously, Marina socially, I'm sure she's not everyone's cup of tea, but she has a pretty solid social game strategically. She's kind of setting herself up well. And yeah, I think Marina definitely has the potential to make a very long run in this game.
And I'd like to know one more thing about Marina too, by the way. Like we talked about the conversation between Kyle and Keon long term in the game. I think Marina's social game is just up there. I mean, maybe a touch below them, but like the threat level also is just significantly less at this point as well. So I
mhm.
think she's primed with almost like 2 shields because she's working with them. So it's like I think she's prime with having 2 shields, and then on top of her working with Luna, someone who's on the bottom. And I know we haven't gotten to Luna quite yet, but someone who's on the bottom that not a lot of people want to work with. It's really a really good position right now for her to go long far in the game.
Absolutely. Next, I kind of want to cover Anthony. What are our thoughts on Anthony?
So when we went over Deriva and we went over Mackie, I said there were a few people on Nauta who reminded me of Mackie, and Anthony is one of those people who, at this point in the game, they haven't done much for me. They're kind of just there. They may have made one or two key connections, but they're not really the forefront of any storyline. And so I'm kind of meh on Anthony so far.
Yeah, the same point I made about Miguel and Maki as well. I can put the same argument to Anthony. I feel like Anthony excels with the relationships that are easy for him, and then the relationships that are more difficult for him, he definitely struggles a bit. So again, his game kind of plateaus a little bit and just stays flatlining because he's somewhere in the middle. He's flatlining because there is two sides to that coin essentially.
Absolutely. Anthony, to me, the funny thing about Anthony is we'll see throughout this episode, Anthony potentially could have been in danger had they gone to tribal this episode. His name was being brought up in a bunch. Marina kind of found him shady, some players as well kind of just found him shady, the way he texted. Like you guys said, Anthony definitely the people he vibes with. If you're not really his cup of tea, he's just not gonna mess with you, and it's just gonna lead to a very dry conversation, as we can kind of see through the one-on-ones. He's not really in a power position on this tribe. He is really trusted by Keelan, but he's definitely kind of in this under the radar position right now, this middle kind of man dynamic on this tribe. But I think he definitely needs to work on the relationships if he wants to make it further in the game, for sure. And if he wants a bigger power role, power position, I think it's going to revolve him having to get closer with Kyle and players like Marina and Keon.
Mhm.
Now,
Yep.
I want to talk about Cody. What do we think of Cody?
He has great CFs, I'll say that.
He has awesome
Um,
confessionals, yeah.
so in
He
season
does.
one, we kind of casted someone similar named Summer, who we didn't have the highest hopes for gameplay wise, but we knew he would bring amazing confessionals. And Cody is kind of that player for me this season. Cody has a decent strategic mind, but he isn't that great socially with players, and it's catching up to him. And so he's kind of on the lower side of the totem pole because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with Kingstyn there. I didn't have the highest hopes for Cody. I watched him play in Bermuda. I love Cody to death. Hope he doesn't get mad at me, but it just wasn't he was on a very active tribe, and then so I was wondering if he would do better on this tribe since it's not as quite as active as the one he was on Bermuda, but yeah, he just his game has been kind of just mid so far. I mean, he's shared a lot of info with us, and he's been very informative. But as far as like the gameplay goes, I mean, his conversations have been kind of surface level, and people have noted that he's not the easiest to connect with.
I definitely think Cody, he hasn't really been able to connect well with anyone, but he does think his social game is very good, which unfortunately that doesn't really look like it's the case so far, with him thinking that a lot of people have him as his number one, but that's just not really the case. He actually has Kyle at his number one, but we can see that it doesn't help that him and Marina were looking at him as an easy first boot if they were to lose this
Mhm.
episode. So, it's a little interesting on Cody, but he does give great CFs. I will say that. And, it'll be interesting to see how he navigates the rest of the game.
And like I said, it's more so just like the surface level conversation. Like from what I noticed, it's never a deep conversation where you really get to know someone with Cody. It's very surface level, and it's hard for you to connect with people, and hard for people to want to go to bat for you when you're not making those deep connections when you're like digging your claws into people. It's not, it was all super surface level, and people didn't really have an opinion on him.
And finally, the last person, Luna. Our thoughts.
Okay, so Luna, if you're listening to this, please don't hate me, but if I'm being completely honest, Luna is a casting regret for me. Um,
Oh.
they brought a pretty decent app, and so I was pretty excited to see them. But so far in the season, they've been inactive. They haven't brought any good gameplay, and they're just kind of like a filler spot in the cast.
Yeah, I mean, I like Luna's personality. I just don't see enough of it. Luna, you're just really inactive. You're just kind of going with the flow of things. I think that's really what's holding you back. Because honestly, hot take, uh, I don't mind Luna's confessionals. I think they're different, and I like different
Mhm.
people. Like I like different people. That's why we casted our cast. Like it was a blend of different people, and I think Luna has like really interesting confessionals with the quotation marks, counting each confessional. I don't mind it. I actually really like it because it just gives us something different. But if you could just get online more, I mean, seriously, if you could just get online more and have more of a presence, that would be great. But beyond that, I mean, there's not much to note so far of Luna.
I mean, I do want to note she does do a good connection with Marina, and we'll see in later episodes this does blossom into something that is advantageous for Luna. But besides that, she unfortunately doesn't have any real gameplay to talk about. It's just kind of here's a message, hi, how are you? How's your day? There's nothing really else to talk about.
So Luna hasn't really been the most active ones. Yes. Um, it does make her seem like she's the easy first boot, but she does have a clear relationship with Marina that, like Kingstyn said, will blossom in the future. The
Mhm.
thing with Luna is, her confessionals are interesting. Like you said, I don't think they're necessarily bad. It is interesting, the whole numbering thing in the quotes. It's interesting for sure. We did cast Luna because Luna did have a great app, or at least a better one for sure. For me, I think it is a little disappointing for sure. I definitely think that Luna to me is the type of player where she's gonna get sniped before a merge, or if she doesn't, she's gonna make it to the end. So I feel like if she's not sniped before merge, she's definitely gonna be someone taking up a seat in a final trouble council scenario.
I just don't see a way where it's anything in the middle besides either being a pre-merge boot or being a zero vote finalist at this point.
Mhm.
That's to me, those are like what we're dealing with here. Those are going to be the two options, and then I personally like Luna's personality, but like I said, there's just not enough presence, and with presence comes respect.
So now that we've kind of taken a deep dive, we've discussed our initial thoughts on the castaways. I kind of want to talk about the challenge. So castaways on this challenge, they did face value, which was a competition where the castaways were kind of assigned brain, brawn, and beauty, which they were divided into two, two, and two. So obviously, it's interesting because we see this social divide, not really divide, but this kind of socialness from the beauty tribe, or not beauty tribe, but the beauty chat from all these different types of players. There's one player though who isn't really extremely social in that chat, and it's Marina. Now, people were talking about it as we see through Chun-Li's VCF. So, for those who don't know, Chun-Li had a VCF, and he went through the whole entire beauty chat challenge and basically assigning points and who he saw as threats visibly. But one he couldn't get a read on was Marina, which Marina's kind of refusal talking due to her finding that chat crazy. Do you guys have any thoughts on that beauty chat at all, or
So Marina definitely was not talkative in that chat, but I also want to mention Malachi. He also wasn't talkative in that chat at all, and I think that was just because whenever we were casting and making tribes, we wanted to split up kind of archetypes to make sure there weren't like, oh, these two are immediately going to connect and lock in. Kind of similar to what we did in season one with you two, Chill and BG. We knew to
Mhm.
split you guys up because we knew you guys would immediately click. And there were a lot of people in this beauty tribe like Mickey, Chun-Li, Trap Queen, Keon, who we knew would click because they're similar in personality. And I think because Marina and Malachi were a different personality and they weren't dominating conversation, they didn't really have a way to enter it.
And I just would want to touch on one thing aside from what he said. I think there's something to be said about it being almost advantageous to not talk in those chats. I mean, yeah, sure, it's a first impression, but I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world for you not to talk, and then you know you never know who you're gonna get into those chats. You know, they could go back to their original tribe and be like, oh, this person's a big threat. This person's, you know, didn't talk. I don't know much about them. I'd rather be known as someone who they don't know about, as opposed to someone who was over talking and you know putting a threat level on my back. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to stay quieter in those chats. Then you know I just don't think it's a big deal.
Hmm.
So we kind of see the results of the first challenge. You know, over on Casco, Greeny, and Newbie, you know, they score at 16 minutes and 38 seconds. And then on Deriva, we have Alexis and Miguel, who finished the best actually of all three tribes. And then we had Nada and Cody, who competed in the second best. So, you know, we see these results. We don't really need to go through all of them one by one by one. But basically, what happens is Casco loses the first challenge of the season, which leads to Tribal. The reason the Mickey and Greeny one matters is because not Mickey and Greeny, Newbie and Greeny is the second they lose, Newbie hints at Greeny almost immediately to Chun-Li by kind of hinting that he did better at the puzzle. So now we're kind of going into Tribal, and you know, there's a tribe of 6, there's no advantages at play. So we're seeing players scramble a little bit. So why don't we talk about Tribal a little bit and kind of what went down?
Yeah, I mean, there was an immediate momentum towards Greeny, and I want to say almost unanimously by the entirety of the tribe. Obviously, it didn't go, you know, it didn't spread like wildfire, but you know, back in the back of people's minds, they knew that Greeny would be the boot, and it breaks my heart because I absolutely love Greeny. Um, and I don't, but I also don't want to pull punches either. You know, I understand there was IRL stuff going on, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, you have to read the room a little bit. And you know, while I do think Greeny eventually did get active enough, you know, to and realize, I think it was a little bit too little and too late. You know, I don't know if we're talking about the entirety of the tribal council process, but at the very start, it was pretty much immediate momentum for everyone that Greeny would be the boot. I have more things to touch on, but I don't know if you want to talk about like a different stage of the of tribal or not.
I wanted to touch on something relating to the season twist and why I
Mhm.
think Greeny was just this let's all just vote Greeny piled on name. So like we said earlier, the initial marooning 24 hours, Greeny did kind of become lackluster for people and not as
Mhm.
active because of IRL concerns. And it was kind of that I think created this unspoken rule that okay, we're voting Greeny first. And in a season like this with no advantages, where once you show your cards or once you draw a line in the sand, you don't have an extra layer of protection potentially. I think a lot of people are scared to kind of break the social norm, and because
Right.
the social norm was created for Greeny to go, that's why it kind of just like happened. Even though it might have been better for Newbie and Panda to try and save her because she trusted them, that I don't think they did.
And that's what I wanted to touch on too. Like, you know, that's the biggest thing is reading the room, right? Like, you know, Greeny should have realized the position that she was in even prior to losing the challenge. You know what I mean? Like, you have
Hmm.
a very active tribe. It's not a secret. This tribe is extremely active, you know, and so it's you have to read the room here. Like, if you're on a tribe that's extremely active, and I get it, you have you have a lot of IRL stuff going on, like, but like, you know, when you get online, make sure you're active, make sure you're talking, you know, make sure you're creating those deep bonds, because again, they're doing that when you're not busy or when you're busy. So you know, reading the room, and then on top of that, like, you know your back's against the wall. You have that that gut feeling on day 2, or was it day 3, that you're going home, you're getting mixed signals, you know, but Greeny didn't want to throw a name out. And Panda and Newbie were willing to at least consider it, even if it was like a small percentage. They were willing to at least like console with each other about what Greeny said, and Greeny would not throw a name out at all until it was far too late. And I think that also was
Hmm.
like the final nail in Greeny's coffin, is that Greeny would not throw a name out. And obviously, again, like you noted, Kingstyn, no one's gonna take a wild risk. No one's gonna take a wild chance in a season like this because of like the twist and everything like that. I mean, you might see it down the road, but especially not in the first, the first round. No one's gonna want to make a wild move in the first round. So it really came down to Greenie and her level of aggressiveness. And if she wanted to stay, she needed to throw someone on the bus and really push for it. And I felt like she kind of had the right social readings and awareness on what was going on, but didn't have the right action plan to like get out of that position.
Right.
This was an interesting tribal for sure. I definitely think, unfortunately, right when we did the challenge results, Greenie was kind of screwed, which is really sad to see because Greenie was someone I was really, really excited to see play this season. Obviously, get it, but unfortunately, this tribe was just too active, and I felt like Greenie was active at the wrong time. Like it was, Greenie did what they could, but it was too little, too late. You know what I mean? Like what
Right.
was done when it was done at that point. And I think the Brain Brawn and Beauty with Chun Li, Issa, and Mickey, with Chun Li and Mickey kind of being each other's number ones, and then Issa kind of being the number two. We also see Panda and Newbie get a little close this episode. With their dynamic, they kind of discuss their group and kind of forming an alliance, and also kind of bringing Issa in. We see Panda kind of think Issa's this massive social threat as well, which is a little interesting, which kind of makes him trust Issa a little less. But basically, Greenie makes an alliance with Panda and Newbie, and it's kind of too little too late, Like, Greenie's going around asking for a name, and the name's kind of already decided with Greenie. Even before the challenge was ended, Castaways were already talking to their CFs. Like, all of them were like, Greenie's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only thing Greenie could have done, like you said, Chill, was maybe say a name and specifically, I don't know who Greenie should have thrown in that scenario, but I would have tried to throw something out there just to be like Pan and Newbie. Is this an avenue? Because we could see that Pan and Newbie were generally considering keeping Greenie, but the issue was I tried a six. There's only six votes going into an urn, and there's three other
Right.
votes want to piss off the other side this early on. And with a season with no idols, no advantages, votes matter and relationships matter in this season. Like you have to be strong in your relationships and threat management. And having a 3-3 tribal round one probably isn't the smartest idea, gameplay wise. So I do think they made the right move for their game. I am unfortunate to see Greeny go this early on. But, I felt like what more was Greeny really gonna do? So I guess we'll move on to the next topic. If anyone has anything, just feel free to chime in.
Just one more thing added on. I commend Greenie for at that last couple hours of the tribal, she really tried hard to let me gather the numbers, let me get all these votes on key. I just think her big problem was she didn't read the room correctly. It was like up until 2 hours before the tribal, she hadn't heard one name, and that should be a red flag. Red flag.
Mm-hmm.
We're only one episode in on a season like, especially on a season like this. Nobody is going to go bat for you. You have to go to bat for yourself, and I think she should have seen those red flags, read the room, and really pushed a name way earlier.
Yeah, I don't hate the way that Greenie handled Tribal really at all. Just aside, I think she set herself up well. She understood who was going to consider what. She was kind of getting aired out by, I think it was Mickey, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So she had an understanding of like the dynamic and who she had a chance of saving her. I just think the level of aggressiveness was like the final nail in the coffin. Who knows? Greeny could have been uber aggressive there and still gone home, but it's worth a shot. Nothing was going to get
Yeah.
done without that level of aggressiveness.
I think the next thing I kind of want to cover is, there's kind of the elephant in the room. The season twist itself, no advantages and no idols. I kind of, when I joined production, I was like, I kind of came to the idea with Kingstyn, and I was like, how cool would it be? Because I've seen people complain over and over again of getting screwed over by an advantage, an idol, or some stupid twist. So I thought it'd be cool to just say, let's throw that all out the window for one season. If you want to show that you're the best, this is the perfect opportunity to show it, like this is where social game matters so much, physical prowess matters so much, and threat management matters so much. And I think it's interesting to see how players will play under this dynamic, knowing there's nothing out there that can save them. And meaning there's so much more on a season like this.
Yeah, and that's why I had so much fun making that first challenge. Like you said, threat management is such a big deal in the season. challenges are such a big deal in the season, and so I thought making a challenge where you can kind of highlight people as this person might be good at social, this person might be smart, this person might be good at the brawn normal challenge types. I might want to look at them in the future in this aspect, and that's why I think the first challenge was such a great choice for this season.
Yeah, I'd actually like to see this challenge be like a potential mainstay. It just
Mhm.
introduces so many different avenues to us, especially as prod and even to like our trusted spectators. Like they just have so much information to gather alone just from this competition. Like I mentioned earlier, you never know what someone's gonna take back to their tribe with them. Sometimes you'll get a really aggressive player that comes back and is like, yeah, this person did this and this person did that, and sometimes you'll get nothing. And I think there's a beauty to that because you'll always get, with this type of competition, you'll always get something different.
I think those are all great points, and I kind of want to talk about now is episode 2. Something notable to mention about Casco is that we do see not Mickey, Newbie and Panda make an alliance with Issa, which Issa is the one to request. But
Mhm.
now Issa is kind of in this middle position on this Casco tribe, having an alliance with both Mickey and Chun Li, and an alliance with Newbie and Panda. So she's kind of in the top power position right now on that tribe. For Nada, we don't really see this big of a change. I mean, the power rankings, power structure kind of stays the same on this tribe. Kyle and Keon are kind of at the forefront. There's a potential alliance brought up between Marina, Kyle, and Keon that we see get formed. And then other ones as well potentially formed. Talked between Kyle and Keon as well, kind of playing this middle position. But other than that, there's not really these notable developments considering both tribes win immunity. We do see Deriva go to tribal this episode, which, yeah. Do you guys have any other thoughts or anything you want to talk about before obviously we jump into the challenge and tribal?
I think there's a lot of active players in this cast. I think that first episode really just set this tone for each tribe, and so I don't think the pre-tribal dynamics really change that much. So I don't think we need to go over it.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think the dynamics take pretty similar. I think the only notable things are the things I mentioned from Casco and Nada. And I guess we could just jump into, Deriva loses the challenge. And we actually see Malachi cost his tribe the challenge with
Hmm.
an hour time.
That was a hard watch.
Yeah.
It was so bad Miguel thought Malachi didn't compete in the challenge at all.
That is, yeah, it was rough. It was rough for sure. So why don't we just jump into tribal then?
Hmm.
So this tribal, originally Malachi's name kind of gets thrown around, but we obviously see Trap King's kind of going sporadic, Trap Queen's going around, and Trap Queen's a little delusional, Trap Queen thinks that Trap Queen's kind of group leader, I guess, but in reality, Trap Queen's on the freaking bottom. So Malachi's obviously going around apologizing. Thankfully, his social game kind of covers him here, and we see Trap Queen getting a little danger for also being overtly messy. And I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on the tribal? And what do you guys think?
Yeah, like pretty much like you said, Malachi's name was floated around. The biggest thing I have and the biggest issue I have with Trap Queen is I actually hot take. I don't think Trap Queen's social was that bad actually. Obviously it was like more of like an inactivity thing, but I don't think they're so. I think they just had a different personality. Right. And I think when you have a different personality and then you do like something uber aggressive, like make an alliance with everyone without your target in the alliance, it just is going to rub people the wrong way. I've never seen that work. It makes you look like the ringleader. It just makes you look like you're someone who wants to run the tribe. It's just obviously always going to result in some type of negative outlook, and that's exactly what happened. I don't know if people were seriously considering Malachi, especially like with Trap Queen there. I don't know how serious it was, but it's not surprising for me that Trap Queen went home after doing something like that, especially during the first tribal. A lot of people make these first impressions based off of how people handle their first tribal, and it just ended up being something that I'm not surprised happened. And to me, I kind of tuned out a lot of the back half of this tribal because I knew what was going to happen. You know what I mean? So, I would like to touch on Malachi too. Malachi mentioned, you said he had a good social. I think the highlight of his social was how calm he remained throughout the entirety of the process. Like, yeah, he still checked up with people. Naturally with your name floated out there, you're gonna want to check in with people, but he still didn't panic. I didn't get a sense of panic from Malachi at all, honestly. And I think that's something that people can work with. Again, when you go to tribal, it says a lot about your game. People in the best position can easily go to the worst position, just how they're handling tribal. And people who, their names might be floating around, if they handle tribal really well, that might be a long-term ally, later on.
I agree with you on that. I think Trap Queen is slightly underrated. I don't want to say that her social was great. I think a vast majority of this cast had a better social than her. But I think, she had a few connections. She had Mackie, who notably had a kind of half duo with her. I'm pretty sure we had a big TVCF this episode where he said he didn't mind if Trap Queen or Malachi went. But I think the real weakness here, like you said, was her just like people didn't feel that they could rely on her after this episode because she was kind of all over the place.
Hmm.
I think you both touch on great points. We also see the creation of Deriva, the concept, which is created by Trap Queens. So this is an alliance that features Trap Queen, Alexis, Big T, and Maki. Trap Queen's going around talking with people, spreading lies. And one important feature that we have to name is Trap Queen told Malachi that Big T threw his name. And big calm throughout this because Malachi goes to Alexis, and we kind of see this trust form between Big T and Alexis a little more because Alexis kind of lets Big T know, and it kind of makes him aware of the situation. And Big T stays calm. Big T, though, through his VCF right there, states he is okay with letting Malachi go. If actuality, he is
Yeah.
someone who he would prefer for Malachi to go because Malachi to him is a player that scares him long term. Being someone,
Yep.
so someone everyone who likes, that's the type of player he wants to not play with. He'd rather play with someone like Chapman, a less crazy player, because he feels like he can kind of work with players like that a lot more. He also notes how close his connection is with Alexis, and they kind of vibe a lot. And we see that though, unfortunately, Big T decides he doesn't really want to do anything with that though, and it's too early to try and make a move on Malachi. And the safest option is just to go Trap Queen because the tribe kind of agrees. And yeah, I think we kind of lead through that with this kind of fifth defiance that Trap Queen makes. And yeah, I think we just see unfortunately 5-1 on Trap Queen. Do you guys have any other thoughts on Tribal or no?
I want to point out one thing. I think it's interesting how you brought up the on a season like this, you don't want to rock the boat for this tribal. Even after we did the last tribal, we said the same thing. And I think that's a common pattern we'll see again in episode 1 on Casco. The majority Brain Brown Beauty Alliance decided the status quo, and that would be Greeny going, and that's what happened. On this tribe, Alexis was choosing the status quo, which was that Trap King would go, and that's what happened. I think we'll see this pattern come up as each tribal comes up.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think one last thing I want to go over with you guys is Contenders. What are our thoughts? Who do you think, in your eyes, is you genuinely from these two early episodes pre-swap, are someone you think I could see them winning this? What are your guys' thoughts?
I'd like to say right now, and this is through 2 episodes. At the time of our podcast, we're done with episode 3.
Hmm.
But right now, I'd like to say Marina is someone who is just standing out to me. They're just so well positioned with, attached to the power structure, almost even a part of the power structure. And then, still having a good social, but also still having that one person that no one really wants to work with, but she has a close bond with. It's really impressing me. Like, she has the shields, she has numbers, and she has a low threat profile so far. So right now, through 2 episodes, I think one of my favorite players in general, just from a personality standpoint, if not my favorite, is also someone who I think could genuinely win this game. And Issa as well. Issa is in a phenomenal position as well. Right in between those two duos, spoiler alert, we end up swapping the next episode, but that actually ends up helping Issa's game, in my opinion, because she doesn't have to necessarily flip on anyone quite too early, and she gets to just have, 4 really strong allies going into any swap ship. So those are my 2 right now that I'm really high on.
Again, like Chill said, I want to preface this that we are done with episode 3, which was the swap. We are halfway through episode 4, and I'm gonna try and keep my contenders just with my pre-swap thoughts. And I think early on to this game, who you want to look at are these under the radar kind of misty type players. And I think similar to what you said, Chill, Marina's up there for me. Issa is my number 1 contender for this pre-swap portion. I think kind of similar to how Big T is kind of playing dumb. I think she's not showing people how smart she is,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's going to bring her a long way. Um, Another person I want to comment on that I think we're kind of underrating in this pre-swap portion is Newbie. I think he is super under the radar, and I think he has a very promising future for him at this point. Oh, and also Alexis, I should mention.
Yeah, Alexis's social. Yeah, I would also like to throw in Alexis's name as well.
Hmm.
I'm obviously very, very high on Alexis. I see potential there. I also see Alexis being the winner of the season. I think for me, what makes Alexis such a compelling character, like we already mentioned, I won't just restate points, but I just think Alexis being so, not overtly social. Like Alexis is playing like the perfect like social but not too social. It's just likability and it's subtle, and I think it just makes people trust them because they can kind of play everyone's angle. They're willing to talk about whatever and kind of mirror. And I think mirroring is such a skill that like you really see like if someone can mirror, I think that's what makes someone a great word player is being able to adapt to who you're talking to. Because like not every person is going to be the same, and not every person should be treated the same. And you need to analyze and kind of sort out and figure out how you're going to move the puzzle pieces to kind of make the puzzle pieces kind of match what you want it to. And I think Alexis to me is someone who can do that. And I think that's why I think if Alexis can manage their threat level, I think Alexis could go all the way. I think someone for me I'm also extremely high on is Issa from the Casco tribe, just because Issa isn't playing the number 1 game. I know we're talking about Alexis and Kyle, Issa's kind of seen as mostly everyone's number 2. Obviously, some number 1, but Issa's mainly everyone's number 2, and Issa's kind of seen in this middle portion in this before swap. And I think she's playing a great game right now. She's not burning any bridges at all, and she's kind of keeping her options open, but she's not really being caught for playing the middle. She's in this perfect position, and I think she's really setting herself up nicely and building trust with all her peers heading into the swap, which is going to benefit her a ton. My final contender has to be Marina. The reason I have Marina over Kyle and Keon, while I think Kyle and Keon are fantastic players, the reason I see Marina as a contender for me based on these 2 episodes is because I think Marina, to me, is someone who has a good enough social game to make it far, but I think Marina will do a better job at hiding their social threat level than Kyle and Keon. And I think if she wants things, she'll do it in a more subtle way, but I feel like she'd be able to push aggressively if she needs to. But I do want to give a huge shout out to Kyle because I absolutely see Kyle going far. I just don't know if I can say that he's winning the game as of right now.
I was gonna say I think we all pretty much have the exact same
Oh,
winner picks or people contenders from each tribe.
I do want to add one more thing. We're talking about Issa and how we think she's up there as the top contenders because she's so in the middle and stuff. But then you look at Kyle and Keon, they're also in a middle position. I think the reason that Issa is going to have much more success or a higher chance to is just the way she carries herself. She is very good at saying a lot without saying really anything
Mm-hmm.
and giving away information, while Kyle and Keon are they come very like strong in their conversations, and I think it's that way that they carry themselves in one-on-ones that's gonna like get people to look at them before they look at Issa. So
And through these episodes, Kyle and Keon don't go to tribal, which is
Mhm.
obviously naturally something you build trust with. So, the fact that, Marina and, was it Marina? Sorry, not Marina. Issa and who was our other person we're high
Alexis?
on? Yeah, Alexis. The fact that they both went through tribal does speak volumes. So
Mhm.
it is something that trust is tested, and trust is always something that is it grows with actions, and the fact that they have actions behind their behind their games and what they say also helps them drastically as well.
Yeah, I think I'm a firm believer actually that going to tribal early on is actually huge
Yeah, agreed.
benefit because you kind of get to see where people's real loyalty lies. And I think
Mhm.
not that was actually a disadvantage because obviously we'll see throughout later on the swap people start considering tribe lines and stuff like that. But going to tribal kind of makes you reconfirm trust people and really see where people really stand. Does their word really mean what it means? And you can kind of see how people play because everyone's like chill and happy before tribal starts. But when tribal starts, we see how people's true colors kind of come out and how they're going
Mhm.
to play. Sure. So I think that's what makes it so interesting and the advantage to going to tribal early. While these
Mhm.
polls votes were unanimous early on, I definitely think in future episodes we'll see the gameplay ramp up. As we kind of stated before with the no idols
I
and
agree.
advantages, I think it's best for players to kind of not do something different so early on or do some big move or have big move itis or kind of just rock the boat when there's no really need to. On a season with idols with nothing at play, there's no reason to split either. So I think we will be seeing a couple unanimous votes early on, but I definitely think throughout the season we will definitely see the gameplay ramp up over time.
And I want to touch on you saying, because I wholeheartedly agree that going to tribals early on helps a lot. I know this isn't this org, but I want to touch on a different org, Contenders. The season me and Chill played, we didn't go to a tribal until almost the merge, and it kind of caused my downfall because I didn't truly know where Chill standed. He, behind my back, was planting seeds about me, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't really catch on to that until it was almost too late. And I think it's interesting. We're seeing something similar happen here with Kyle and Marina. Kyle is talking about having this undying loyalty. He's already talking about me and Marina are going to the final three, blah, blah, blah. And Marina is already having cracks in her mind about Kyle. And I think not testing that loyalty early on could spell disaster for him in the future.
Yeah.
Well, does anyone have any closing thoughts before I kind of close this off,
I
or?
have a fun question for you guys. Give me
Hmm.
one player that you have found really entertaining through confessionals. We didn't touch on, the entertainment factor too much. I tried to give my flowers out whenever I could, but like, who's someone that maybe isn't the best socially or not even the best strategically, but someone who's just really good at entertaining us and just being a fun presence in the confessionals or VCFs, whatever the case could be. And that person I want to shout out is Chun Li. Chun Li is a really fun character,
Hmm.
really good confessionals. I already talked about Marina. I said it a little bit about Issa, but like Chun Li has been, maybe we kind of underrated him as far as like his strategy and his social game goes. I think he's hot and cold when it comes to his social game and how he's perceived. But as far as a character goes, I absolutely adore Chun Li.
Yeah, I think I'm all for giving people their flowers. I think Chun-Li has been fantastic so far through VCFs and confessionals. I also obviously do want to give a shout out to Cody because he's had some exceptional confessionals. Whether the takes have been kind of hot and cold, you kind of stated, I have so much respect for just taking the time to write that all out and kind of share with us what he is thinking because I know that takes a lot of time on his end. I also have found Marina's confessionals to be hilarious with Kyle triple texting her and her going crazy about it.
Yes,
I
yes.
want to give a shout out to Mickey as well because I think Mickey's been a lot of
Hmm.
fun and he's been a fun character.
Yeah, Mickey was who I was gonna mention, um, and someone else who, and you talk about Chun Li, and me personally, I haven't been that high on Chun Li CFs because I'm more so someone who prefers more organized CFs. And I think people like Chun Li, Issa, kind of remind me of UVG from season one, where like it's kind of all over the place, scattered thoughts, and that could bring good one-off. Oh, this is a really good thought. This is a really good like CF, but I think it's less consistent. Like I said, I was really high on Mickey's. I really like Cody's, and I also really love Keon's. I think he brings a really unique like news station type thing to a CF, and I really enjoy reading
King
those. So,
Keanu's.
yep. We should also mention that this CFs are really important this season because Chill, if you want to announce, like you obviously put a prize pool into the CFs. So.
Yeah, I mean, Kingstyn already kind of touched on it in Tree Mail, but I just had such a good time, like, doing the VCFs and whatnot. So I wanted, and honestly, like, Kingstyn's my friend, so I wanted to, like, support his org and be a part of it as well. So I threw in $25 just to give give to those that are more entertaining. They might not win a lot of awards at the end of the day, but they did bring some to the server. And so it would be, what is it, 15 for VCFs and 10 for confessionals? Is that what it is?
I think it's the other way around.
Okay, so it was for confessionals, and then it was $10 for best VCF. So just to
Yes.
encourage people in future seasons, like there is gonna be some type of compensation or some type of reward for being active in your VCFs, especially VCFs. I love hopping into a VCF, but
Mhm.
just showing that level of activity and presence for sure.
And I think that's really important, and I really love that. I appreciate you so much for doing that.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important because we have lives. We can't read every single one-on-one, and so really, what at least for me, my majority of what I'm getting through these people are through their CFs. And so if someone,
Same.
I don't want to name names, but there's a few people on this cast who haven't really done that, and I haven't really seen their inner thoughts this season so far because of it. And so I think adding that conversation really motivates people to put their all into it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to give a shout out and thank you to Kingstyn for giving me that random stray. You know, yeah, I had some 3-hour VC confessionals on my seasons.
Well, some
So,
about CFs on VCFs, so
you know, it's kind of the same thing. But yeah, I kind of just wanna give also a shout out to Keon. I think his confessionals have been great. Like you stated, Kingston, it's obviously great. Chill putting out $25 is obviously, I think it's a great incentive for players. I mean, you're getting rewarded for having good CFs, $15 for a great CF and $10 for a great VCFs. We love to hear from, as a production standpoint, people's thoughts on the season, and I think just updating the CFs, it just helps. Is there anything else we have to add, or anything else you guys want to add before we kind of close this?
this has been a really long recording, so I think we covered everything.
All right. Well, I guess that's it. And if anyone watched this whole thing, I just want to say thank you, and we look forward to the next episode of the Kingvivor
Yeah, you
podcast. Thank
guys,
you.
you guys should DM us a. I don't know what should they DM us if they watched all of it.
Like a
If you,
safe word.
yeah, what should they DM us if they watched all of this?
Do,
Chill is the best Kingvivor
oh
winner.
no. Okay, don't DM us
What?
anymore.
If you watch this, make sure to DM us. VG's confessionals are great. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
but
that. All right. Well, once again, thank you so much for tuning in. If you did watch all of this, and yeah, I think we're gonna close with that, and we'll see y'all on the next episode of the King Viber podcast.